Will Arthas return? Will he actually be involved in the story? And if he is, will Blizzard redeem him? Those are all very big questions, and if you take a look at patch 9.1, well, they are questions that Blizzard themselves are teasing. So, today, join us for some fresh lore, some new perspectives, and, an angle on one of Warcraft's most important events. And gear up to slay demons with today's sponsor, crunchyroll.com/Bellular. You will get your 14-day premium free trial with our link down below. Now, you may have heard of today's recommendation before, Demon Slayer. At its core, it is a dark fantasy adventure that does its best to ascend the traditional bounds of shonen while staying simple. It manages to avoid, I think, a very easy trap for some anime to fall into. It's full of dark themes and tragedy, but it rarely comes across as needlessly edgy, and that is what makes the formula truly work with it. It's got a well-written cast of characters, and on top of that, it is animated by UFO Table, who are essentially best in the business. Like, no one does action better, and it is an absolute spectacle of a show at times. And the good news is that with Crunchyroll, you can watch all 26 episodes right now. And while you're waiting for a season 2 later this year, you can, watch an insane amount of anime on Crunchy. Even stuff airing in Japan right now. Their simulcast means that you can get subbed episodes as fast as an hour after they hit Japanese television. So, get full 1080p episodes on any device that you own with a 14-day free trial of Crunchyroll at crunchyroll.com/Bellular. A big thanks to them for sponsoring, and with that said, let's go. Frostmourne damages souls in a way that appears to split them, amongst other nasty things. We've seen that in Uther, potentially also in Sylvanas. We'll get to that one in a future video. And with other characters like Taranis Menethil, a fragment of whose soul we actually see a little hint of around the Sanctum of Domination in Torghast in 9.1. Now, we find out that this process also damages the soul, darkening it, twisting its memories, in a way changing its personality. You'll soon learn what that did to Uther, but armed with this context, let us first take a look back at the moment Arthas became a Death Knight.
Turn back, mortals. Death and darkness are all that await you in this forsaken vault. You shall not pass.
So then, what is the situation with Arthas? Well, he was defeated atop Icecrown Citadel, struck down in the midst of the souls that Frostmourne had shattered and consumed. Yet, as we know, his soul was its first victim. Years ago, Arthas journeyed to Northrend, hell-bent on vengeance. Stratholme was Mal'Ganis' fault, and he would be the one to put him to death for it. One fateful day, this quest led him to a cave of rock and ice, one the walls of which were riddled in glowing veins of ore. He and Muradin were accosted by revenants. They told him to turn back, that only death and darkness would follow. Arthas and his companion pressed on, and when they did, they came upon this. Whomsoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit. Sometime after Frostmourne crashed down to Azeroth, the local elemental revenants, led by the mysterious Guardian, inscribed that text upon a dais just before where Frostmourne lay. A dire warning, one that Muradin had no trouble deciphering, and one Arthas ignored. Why did elementals, who used to serve the old gods and would go on to do so in the Cataclysm, appear in this cave. A cave riddled with saronite, the crystallized blood of an old god. And why did they try to steer Arthas away from Frostmourne? To that, we have no canonical answer. Arthas did, though, turn to Frostmourne. He ignored Muradin's warnings. He muttered, "I will give anything or pay any price if only you will help me save my people." With that, the ice that encased Frostmourne shattered. Spears of that ice shot through the cavern. One found Muradin, piercing his armor and his body. And as Muradin lay, presumably dying, Arthas in fact rushed to help him. The light coursed through him. This was Arthas, the paladin, intent to save his friend and mentor. His eyes stinging with tears, his soul screaming with guilt, he suddenly stopped because something changed. A presence entered his mind. Frostmourne hungered. Utterly transfixed, Arthas rose to his feet as the life-saving light faded, and Muradin just lay there. Frostmourne was now before Arthas. The friend he had frantically attempted to save was now but a casualty of war in his eyes, one who died for the greater good. Arthas reached for the blade. Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, the novel, tells us what he experienced when he touched it. Cold shot through him, shivering up his arms, spreading over his body and into his heart. It was painful for a moment, and he knew a hint of alarm. And then suddenly, it was all right. It was all right. Frostmourne was his, and he was its. And its voice was speaking, whispering, caressing inside his mind as if it had always been there. With a cry of joy, he lifted the weapon, gazing at it in wonder and fierce pride. He would make things right. He, Arthas Menethil, and the glorious Frostmourne that was now as much a part of him as his mind or his heart or his breath, and he listened intently to the secrets it revealed. You just witnessed the shattering of Arthas's soul. In but a few short moments, he went from frantically saving his friend's life to the cold, ruthless Death Knight that we would play in the Frozen Throne campaign. The one who murdered his father and butchered his own people. Yet, as we're told, all was right for him. Frostmourne was his, and he was its. Frostmourne shatters souls. It twists them, it darkens them. And what it did to Arthas, it did to countless others. A few of whom we have in fact met. Uther. Vengeful, hot-headed, arrogant. Those are not really words you'd generally try to describe him. That's not who he's really meant out to be. A very far cry from respect, tenacity, and compassion, which are the three virtues of the Knights of the Silver Hand. Yet Uther, in fact, was those unpleasant things, pretty much by his own admission. Let's get into it. The domination magic-fueled Mournblades of Zoval's agents have wrought havoc, and to know our enemy, we therefore must understand those Mournblades. Who better to ask, then, than one of Frostmourne's victims? Well, knowing that Uther's soul was shattered by Frostmourne, we, in 9.1, head to Torghast, and we steal away the missing fragment of Uther's soul. Look closely at Uther's death, right? You can literally see his soul split, the blue ascending up into the Shadowlands, and then the light part being claimed by Uther. Yes, the Uther we met, whose story was recounted in Afterlives, is but a fragment. It might be most of him, but Uther was incomplete. Our attempts to right this wrong do not really go smoothly. Because as Uther in the story tries to reconnect with his soul, to become whole again, he in fact finds himself engulfed in his traumatic past, seeing the glorious moments of his life turn cold as his traumas infest them. He relives his vows to the Silver Hand, respect, tenacity, and compassion, only to then find himself being brought to Stratholme, forced to relive Arthas' decision. And when that happens, Uther begins to realize that storming off on Arthas may not have been the move. After all, if he had have shown compassion to Arthas, maybe Uther could have reached him, could have changed his mind, could have helped steer him away from his dark path. Worse still, after seeing Stratholme, Uther, in his vision, is pulled back to a memory of Arthas' vows. The young Arthas felt doubt in his heart, telling Uther, "You've taught me so much, but sometimes I wonder if I'm truly meant to walk this path." And Uther then is forced to listen to his past self, brush off Arthas' doubts, to just say to clear his mind with a sparring session. Arthas comments that sparring always does clear his mind. So we have this young prince, unsure of his path, being pushed forward by the expectations of those who are around him. No wonder then that his insecurities ultimately got the best of him. For we all know that those who are the loudest, the most brash, the most arrogant, sometimes the most quick to action and all of that, they're often doing so to compensate for those insecurities. And those are the insecurities, in the case of Arthas, that the jailer would target directly. And seeing all of this, Uther pretty much realizes. He realizes that he did not comfort Arthas. He didn't really listen to Arthas. No, he encouraged a young paladin along the path to being a paladin. But he perhaps realizes that that's not what Arthas the human needed. He realizes that perhaps if we were all more compassionate and respectful, then maybe we would have realized the obvious, right? That Arthas' problems started long, long before he came upon some blighted grain, the gates of Stratholme, or that icy cave in Northrend. That Arthas was being pushed down a path of expectations, one that was not right for him. And when Arthas pretty much said that he didn't feel that path was right, those around him downplayed his doubts. This all played a major role in Arthas' character flaws, which are the very flaws that set him down the path to Frostmourne. As we can see here, Frostmourne literally damaged Uther's soul. That's a part of what Uther experienced. It wasn't like he reconnected with that lost fragment of his soul and then felt whole. No, he was forced to relive all of these dark and twisted weavings of his memories. But once he relives that, once he lives through that, and he processes that, and he does reconnect with his soul, well, he becomes more himself, the Uther that we know. And when that happens, he is able to more clearly see how Arthas fell down his path. And here's what's core. At the end of this experience, Pelagos asks Uther what became of Arthas, forcing Uther to admit that along with Devos, he cast Arthas into the maw, saying that she led him down a dark path. Pelagos immediately realizes that the pair of them, that Uther and Devos, actually bypassed the Arbiter when they did this. We even see they directly plucked Arthas' soul and threw it in the maw. Now, since the maw is only for souls beyond redemption, and since we know that Arthas was not judged at all by the Arbiter, so it means he was not judged as being somebody who should be in the maw, Pelagos in fact realizes correctly that Arthas could indeed be redeemed, because the Arbiter had not issued her judgment. And that is not all. In the Folk and Fairy Tales book, we see a tale of young Uther, wherein he is essentially pulled into an alt-universe Lordaeron. It's all very fantastical, very much like a fairy tale. And in this fairy tale, he attends a tournament. The king is called Artanis. It's an anagram of Tyrannus, Arthas' father. And at this tournament, he sees Miathras, daughter of the king, being forced to fight the various knights of the realm against her will and in the form of a frostworm. She vanquishes the knights. Now here's what's key. It is heavily implied that she was fighting against her will. Her hands are in fact scarred by the chains that bound her. Now if you rearrange the name Mithras, you literally get I am Arthas. Of course, we know that the Helm of Domination allowed the jailer to influence Arthas greatly. And now we have a fairy tale driving that point home. A tale where Mithras is pretty much forced to do terrible things against her will, and where, yes, she is shown as being dangerous and defeating these knights, but she is also shown as a victim. I mean, it's even the chains that bind her, and we're going into a patch called Chains of Domination. We've been through a lot today, so let's put it all together. We learned that Frostmourne shatters and damages souls. Arthas was its first victim, and when we revisit Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, as we did at the start of this video, we can clearly see the moment that it acts on him. So that is fact number 1, Arthas' soul being damaged by the blade. Fact 2 is the diminished culpability of Arthas in the Lich King's actions, as speculated upon massively during Shadowlands because of what we learned about the Helm of Domination, and of course that has now been reinforced by that fairy tale. Fact 3 is that when Uther looks back in his past, he feels regret, and he realizes that he failed Arthas as a mentor, that he treated him as a paladin aspirant, not as Arthas Menethil, a unique person who perhaps should have never been a paladin aspirant. Fact 4 is Pelagos' revelation that Arthas has never been judged irredeemable or judged at all by the Arbiter, making us wonder, perhaps he should be in Revendreth after all. Fact 5 then, Arthas' soul is in the Maw. The jailer presumably has it. Of course, Devos was a Forsworn. The Forsworn signed up with the jailer. So what has he done with it? What is the jailer doing with it? What is he going to do with it? I mean, surely the soul of a Lich King is a special thing. Maybe it's different. At the very least, there'll be a lot of anima in Arthas, won't there? So we cannot know for sure beyond that Blizzard has obviously set up the lore of Frostmourne Shattering Souls and the location of Arthas' soul on purpose, and during and for this expansion. That certainly suggests they'll do something with it, right? There have often been parallels drawn between actually Arthas and Darth Vader. I haven't actually seen the source, but I've seen lots of people suggest that Metzen at some point said that himself. It's kind of hard to know exactly, though I could not find a good source. Though the thing here is that Vader's final act is one of redemption, whereas Arthas' final act, up until now, was, in the cinematic at the end of the ICC raid, him basically realizing what had happened and feeling bad about it as he died. It was just that, it was a realization. It wasn't an action. Vader sacrificed himself to save others. It wasn't total redemption for all the things that character had done, but it was a final redeeming act. Arthas has not yet done such an act. Perhaps that's Blizzard's plan. Perhaps, I would speculate, perhaps whatever Arthas does will help Anduin. Maybe Arthas will see a little bit of himself in Anduin's current predicament, and will try to do something good in the end. Of course, right now we do not know, other than that Blizzard is heavily setting up and teasing everything we've talked about in today's video. So I hope you enjoyed it. It was an absolute blast and mind bend to put together. And with that said, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.